Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Another great Carolina Fintech Hub event that we are putting on, again, to showcase a lot of what people care about in our community, as well as bring the community together in what is a really tough time during this pandemic, where human interaction just kind of doesn't occur in the way it used to. But with that being said, today we really have a great lineup for you guys. I think a lot of us have been really excited about this for a while now, since we've been planning it. We've got some great folks on this panel that are really range from, an entrepreneur, a startup raising capital, larger, more established companies that are new to the neighborhood, but how the same questions, the things we were going through in March, and we were questioning, what is the new normal? What does post-COVID mean? I'm not sure that any of us exactly know that answer yet, but we certainly have 7 months under our belt now where a bit of that new normal is here. And I don't think anyone anticipates it's going to stay like this forever. But I think we've got real data points and real executive anecdotal stories to share. And what better way to explore all of that than with a panel of friends and members of the Carolina Fintech Hub and our ecosystem here to share those thoughts. One more thing I just might add that I think is really important is this is one of the things that is part of this event that I'm excited about, that we were planning in January and February. This isn't the big item, but it is definitely a step towards that direction, to welcome a new company to town. While we've known BB&T and SunTrust and those folks for a long time, while BB&T's been a great member of the Carolina Fintech Hub for years, it can be lost on a lot of us that our new great corporate citizen and neighbor Truist is here in town. And it seems like as we were getting excited and welcoming them, and what does a new headquarters here mean? What does one of the reasons they chose to be here being innovation mean? COVID once again struck, and we really just had to focus in on more tactical items in front of us every day. But now, hopefully, as we're moving into whatever the new normal looks like, we can start going back to some of those exciting pieces of information and see what they mean for our community and for our private sector and public sector altogether. So we're going to get to hear from one of those folks inside that new neighbor, particularly an exciting part, the ventures arm. But with that being said, I do want to make sure everyone is aware that, and I'll share my screen for this one last little piece of information so you can all see upcoming events of note that you all need to be really aware of that are exciting. On November 5th at 5 o'clock, our great ecosystem partner, PayCLT, who's doing really amazing work right now. If you haven't paid attention to what they're doing, they are growing like wildfire right now. It is amazing. I have Abhi Kumar, who is going to talk about financial access and really bring that really unique view of Plaid into the mix. And then November 19th at 8 a.m., Aaron Illman, board certified specialist in data privacy and information security. So don't forget to sign up for those two great events coming up. Without further ado, it's time for me to introduce the moderator of this event. He's well known in every circle throughout town, throughout the world, really. He's a great publisher. He is a great market president of the Charlotte Business Journal, but many of us just know him as one of the best gamers in town. I'd like to bring to the microphone and to the Zoom my good buddy, TJ McCullough. TJ, are you excited about this panel, my friend?
Absolutely. Well, I think your glasses you're wearing are definitely better known than I am. So, but thank you.
They're a big deal. I appreciate you noticing that. With that, TJ, I leave it in your able hands. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tark. And then thank you to Carolina Fintech Hub. This is a great lineup of speakers. We had our pre-panel call yesterday and going to be a lot of great content coming out of this. And again, this is COVID-19 and Charlotte businesses, a retrospective. I think the three most used terms these past 7 months has been pivot, the new norm, and you were on mute. And I think mine has been people telling me I'm on mute more than not. I think I would figure out how to use technology by now. but still struggling a little. So, but without that being said, what I'm going to do is introduce the panel, and then we're going to jump right into it. So first off, I would like to start with ladies first. Vanessa Vreeland, I would like to introduce you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, TJ and Tarek. Thanks for inviting me to be part of the Carolina Fintech panel this evening. I'm Vanessa Vreeland. I run Truist Ventures. And like Truist, I am new to Charlotte. So my family and I moved to Charlotte in May, back when we thought the world would reopen after Labor Day. And have really loved being down here in the limited capacity that we've been able to actually leave our property. But my background is entirely in private equity and venture capital investing. Over the course of my career, I have invested over $800 million with teams that I have built and have had a great return on investment from those, and have had the opportunity to work with companies across a multitude of stages and industries. So I'm really excited to bring my expertise not only to Truist, but to the Charlotte market, where I know I'm in good company. There's a lot of great expertise in this market. So I'm really happy to be part of the environment down here.
So how much better currently is Charlotte than Cincy? Nothing against Cincy, but Charlotte just so much better, right?
Weather-wise, absolutely. So I'm going to go with you there. So no, we've had a great, Cincy's a great town, but so is Charlotte, and we're really excited to be here. So
perfect. Thank you, Vanessa. Next, I would like to introduce Tim Griffin. Tim?
Excellent. Thanks, TJ. Really happy to be here and chat a bit about everything that we've gone through and seen over the last couple of months. In particular, I'm the founder of a company out of Charlotte here called Cloosiv. And in the middle of COVID, we ended up raising our Series A and merging with another company. So now I'm the product officer at a company called Odeko, where we have offices in New York City and Charlotte. So we're seeing firsthand the dynamic of the impact to a large metropolitan area. And then of course, the city of Charlotte. So I'm excited to share a bit about trying to raise capital in the middle of that and to support small business customers and seeing that market shift and evolve over the last couple of months.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. And last but not least, Mr. Dan Ward.
Thanks, TJ. And it's exciting to be here on the panel. I first want to thank Charlotte Fintech Hub. 4 years ago, I joined as an operating committee member, and I really do believe that it has been very meaningful in this environment. I actually moved down into Charlotte from Western New York when I was 28. That was a long time ago, when this city was just getting started to be known as a banking community. I worked for a little company called Nations Bank, and I did that for 23 years in the office of the CFO, and also in the broker-dealer for 10 years. And it was Nations Bank, then it became Bank of America, then Bank of America Merrill Lynch. When I started, it was an $80 billion regional bank. When I left it, it was a global financial services company, $2 trillion. Since then, I've been doing consulting. And with that, I like to say I went global, now I'm local. And that was really what my affinity was for Charlotte Fintech Hub, to get going, because we knew that we had built the towers, but we had to build the community of the skirt in order to make sure that Charlotte would live on as a banking community and a financial center. So I'm happy to be here today and look forward to talking about how we're pivoting to the next thing here, the new normal.
Well, and that's a great view you have right there. I need to probably get Ashley Faye on that to see where that tower is. So love the background. But if I could ask all the panelists to turn their cameras on, obviously it's we are in the new norm, and this is the way, instead of sitting around the table and breaking bread and shaking hands. I know the crowd here would like to see you as well. So perfect. So I'm going to jump right into it. There's a lot of, the first question I would like to ask, and I'll start with Vanessa on this, is, the biggest challenges that you have faced these past 7 months that we've been going through this, and kind of just delve into that and share your experiences.
Sure. So as two companies coming together with a lot of employees moving to Charlotte all at once, I would say the biggest challenge for us has really been just meeting your coworkers and not really having the opportunity to put faces with names on a very frequent basis. The way bandwidth works, sometimes people have video on, sometimes they don't have video on. And so I've been playing a lot of I'm really sorry, I know we've met before, but can you tell me what you do and who you report to? It's just getting that context has been really difficult. So it's been difficult from that perspective. I don't recommend moving during a pandemic. Personally, that wasn't ideal. So there have been a number of challenges, but we've also been able to get some business done as well. And as you know, we've diligenced companies and we've made investments, and the technology for that has actually been fantastic. And I see us maybe moving in that direction and traveling a little bit less in the future. So I don't want to steal too much thunder from some of your future questions, but those are some of the challenges that I've initially faced.
No, that's merging two companies and just travel, all with that, and then getting to know people. It's that can be tough. So it's and then talking about merging two companies, Tim, 12 million in Series capital, Series A capital raised, and then two companies merging during all this. Like, walk us through that experience. Like, what? That just gives me anxiety thinking about it.
I don't recommend it. We had the first term sheet that we got in the process was for the merger. And then decided to run, and I'm sure Vanessa, you'll understand how crazy this is, run a Series A process in 4 weeks to understand our market value and make sure it was the right fit, which was crazy. And of course, it did open up the opportunity to meet with a lot of different funds, and we were able to do so digitally. So that was one benefit of the Zoom era a bit. But it's been difficult to say the least, right? Where we've grown from a 7-person startup to a 35-person startup overnight. We have a whole nother company that we're merging with and trying to get acclimated working with. So there's been a bit of a growing pain from that perspective, just to Vanessa's point earlier, right? Trying to understand who everyone is and where they fit within the organization and how we can best help each other across this kind of collective mission that, the executive team had plenty of time to talk through, but not everyone in the organization did. So it's been an interesting situation, but we have adapted and made it work.
So one more question on top of that, Tim. So, the contactless payments. I mean, so given the growth in that, I mean, how did you decide to pursue the merger with Odeko versus any alternatives you had available during this time?
Yeah. So COVID had an odd impact on our business in that it did effectively lead to significant growth overnight for all intents and purposes. And as a really tiny team, it was somewhat difficult to manage. So we knew pretty early on that we would need to raise new capital in order to sustain that growth and support the customers that were coming on board, which was really the driver behind the initial merger conversation and the additional Series A conversations across different funds. So I think ultimately what we landed on was realizing that there was a much broader vision that we wanted to accomplish and had always wanted to. And together we'd get there much faster. The orchestrator of the merger, so GGB Capital, really helped to tie those pieces together for us and make us realize just how quickly we can get there as a single unit.
Perfect. No, that's very interesting, and love hearing that perspective. And then Dan, so big banking to independent consulting. So what have been your biggest challenges so far in this glorious year we call 2020?
Yeah, well, from a big banking standpoint, the first thing that came to mind is business resiliency. And so how was everybody going to be working from home? And it was just fascinating to see that go into play because we had rehearsed it so many times. And so that to me is the most amazing thing. Who could walk and chew gum at the same time and work from remote? And I can give you literally, I have a client last Friday, smaller bank, 180 people. Talking to the CFO, out of the 180 people, 50 could work remote and only 30 could function in their jobs remote. So they're literally like, that's the new normal, is how do you manage that? And then space coming back into the office as everybody's wrestled small or big is how do you return to the office and the challenges that we have. I guess from the big bank perspective, we always figured once you had that face-to-face meeting, we could team remote, no problem. That's what we learned going across the country, as Hughes Army, we used to say. But there was always the handshake. on the front end of every deal. And I see the heads nodding. From an investment banking standpoint and from a beginning of a relationship, you always have to have that face-to-face. So that was the big thing to overcome on the front end of this, is how do you create new statements, as a consultant, how do you create new statements of work? How do you establish that relationship on the front end where you can have that trust and really know, is that person multitasking or are they listening to me? Those are the things from a communication that are at a premium. And then you get into the whole who's technically challenged. And they relied on maybe their admin to do all that stuff for them, and they're now at home. It really does equalize the playing field. I've talked to a lot of my former colleagues in the banking environment, and they're like almost happy. If their boss was in another city and they had a nucleus of people together, it changes the whole group dynamic and it flattens it. So you really can have what I'd call fast-paced conversation, fact-based decisions. And what's happened is that the digital transformation is actually accelerating for all the reasons that we probably discussed on other calls, is that the interdependency, at least on the fulfillment and service side, where there's still a lot of human interaction that's been neglected from the front end customer experience, digital transformation is really accelerating all the way through the industry. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's that K-shaped kind of activity, if you think about it, where the acceleration on the roadmap for 5 years, and that can be a very good thing for fintech, by the way. So that kind of ties into fintech. I'm doing a lot more startup coaching with fintechs and Series A funding. How do you do that? I totally relate to what Tim and Vanessa are talking to, because that is very active in certain areas.
And that's a good point, especially you said that 180 employee bank and 30 people were prepared to work remotely. So I had a conversation with a CIO, and in March when all this happened, he had to figure out a way to get 6,000 people laptops or computers to work remotely. And that was one of his anxious moments. And that kind of brings me to my next question I want to, open up is, and I'll start back with you, Vanessa, is just how is this remote working accelerating business? Like, what has been your experience? Because we all have different experiences, and kind of just love to hear your take on it, this whole remote virtual world.
Well, I think it's accelerating our investment pace, certainly, because, without having to travel to the West Coast and without having to spend time, in the air, I honestly just feel we're a lot more productive. And I am talking to people all over the country at various times a day, which I just wouldn't be able to do if we were actually traveling there in person. Truist has yet to say I can use the corporate jet wherever I want to go. So until that happens, I think it's good to, I've seen the pace certainly accelerate. And I think, from a COVID perspective, the fintechs look like there were absolutely fintechs who had business models that were impacted positively and others that were impacted negatively. And so those who were impacted either way, in either direction, the PPP work that a lot of fintechs did doesn't really help them from a revenue growth perspective. It's one-time revenue. And so what you're seeing is it accelerated in a lot of ways. COVID has cash burn that was not anticipated, and it yielded great revenue, but it was really kind of centered around that PPP revenue. And so we've just seen a very fast acceleration of companies coming back to market to raise capital much more quickly than we had originally anticipated, and that they had anticipated, quite honestly.
Yeah, we'll speak with Daryl about that private jet, see if we can the corporate jet, we can get you handled with that. But so Tim, your perspective, this virtual world, give us something that you've experienced or your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think just keeping in line with likely a common theme in the Southeast in general is access to capital, right? I think generally, as I mentioned before, it does pose an opportunity for a lot more startups to have conversations with funds that are still distributing out of their funds, right? And even more so these days. I think it's going to potentially increase the ability for startups literally anywhere. It doesn't have to just be the Southeast, but anywhere that isn't San Francisco, to gain access to those conversations and to move through diligence with different funding rounds, especially if you're impacted in a way that shows immediate value and sustained value. In addition to businesses that may have been impacted negatively, but clearly have a long-term opportunity. I'm seeing funding all over the place in various industries that you wouldn't expect. So I do think that it represents a huge opportunity to sort of break that barrier into Silicon Valley, which is experiencing its own issues and own exodus right now, and really start to leverage the opportunity to meet with more investors, because I know they're open to it.
Well, that's the thing that, again, talking about the pivot, you're talking about like new opportunities, like you have breweries that created hand sanitizer during this and finding a different revenue stream. It's entrepreneurs are coming to the forefront during this. And I think that's truly where the opportunity, I mean, that's what entrepreneurs do. They see the opportunity, they strike, and then, it's good for all of us. So I think there are definitely more positives than the negatives that we've experienced through this time for most. And then Dan, so what is your experience with the way we're communicating virtually, and, any tidbits you can share?
Well, the video conference, I know more video conference, Zoom, Google, WebEx, Teams, everything possible. I had to go get a new computer just to handle all that, because that's so critical. I would say that the other thing, and we're not really talking about it much yet, and I don't want to be a downer, but we do still have a significant amount of workforce that's been impacted. And so from a financial service community perspective, I feel like we've been there before. And so the playbook associated with 2008, 9, and 10, for example, with let's just call it the asset classes associated with lending, mortgage in particular as an example, there was a lot of attention that was paid to the forbearance. You talked about PPP. If you just look at about the acceleration of the digitization of those asset classes, because of the dependency on the back office associated with operations. I know it's the not sexy part of fintech, but the thing that excites me is that we're accelerating quite fast the automation of fulfillment and service areas associated with banking because of COVID. And that activity that's going to trend for a while. And that's a really, really good opportunity for fintechs and incumbent banks to partner, because even McKinsey has been recommending, don't try to do it yourself, right? And to accelerate it, use outside help. So the consultants are all over it, but it's the fintechs that really are the ones that are going to create the value associated with that acceleration. And I like to call it the grunt work. You're basically going in and figuring out how to integrate with legacy systems that have been there for since the 80s, 90s, to be kind, 2000s. And that stuff is ripe for fintech integration, and really what the CFH model is designed to do, quite honestly. So, give credit to Tark and the leadership, the private and public leadership that put together 4 years ago the vision, because now you got to execute, and that's what's starting to happen. At least I'm feeling it, and it's starting to get a lot of traction going into planning and prioritizing for 2021.
Now, Dan, real quick. So you said, don't want to be a downer when you brought that up, which certainly there's certain industries especially affected more than others, but it sounds like your last statement right there, it sounds like you, with what's in place, you feel pretty good about, and we'll get into this more, but you still feel pretty good about 2021 and beyond, it sounds like, with where we're headed.
I do. I think if you're focused on the right stuff, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And there's a lot of demand, data science, engineering, subject matter expertise in different areas of banking, fulfillment, the whole governance model that we know and love from a fintech standpoint that we brought from CFH to the fintechs to say, here's how you need to harden your ideas so that you're ready to go to market, really, really be ready from a production ready standpoint. Those things we need to help the fintechs get from, year 1, year 2 to year 5 from a maturity standpoint. And that's exciting stuff. And it's happening. The demand is there.
Gotcha. No, that's good to hear. Then, so we have a real quick question from the audience, and this is something that obviously I think my team asks me once a week, and I'm going to start this with you, Vanessa, because I think so. It's what do you think it would look like to return back into the office post-COVID? Do you think a company's stance will change on work from home, especially for ones that have driven in an office culture?
I think definitely for us it will. We bought some real estate with the anticipation of renovating it. It's just not going to be ready for employees post-COVID anyway. And so I really see us, especially in the near term after post-COVID, using our existing commercial real estate space as more collaboration and meeting space, and continuing to have people work from home or work in more common areas. I think what COVID has taught us, and Dan touched on this earlier, is that for some companies, and we may have been one of the companies that shipped out several thousand laptops in the matter of a week because a number of our employees didn't have laptops. And so that was critical for us as well. But I think what this has taught us is that we can function working from home, and that the quality of life is higher for some employees. We had a handful of employees, more than a handful, but a small percentage of our employees have really expressed a desire to get back to the office, whether it's bandwidth issues or just not space to work from home. And so we've really worked to accommodate those who've requested to come back. But outside of that, I really see even in-person or cultures that have been driven by in-person attendance. I think it's just going to change. I've worked for banks in the past, not Truist, but other banks where, it's kind of butts and seats from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and the CEO walks the floor to see who is still there at 5:20, right? And maybe I'm dating myself a little bit, but I just think that that's just gonna change. I think this has just opened up a lot of people's eyes that you can continue to be productive and provide a great work-life balance.
That's perfect. And then Tim or Dan, I know it's Truist a little bit different than your two companies, but I mean, is anything to add from that, from work from home perspective, or just what you see in general?
From our perspective, we had actually set out to build the team in Charlotte specifically. We had office space. My co-founder actually moved from Texas to Charlotte after last summer and has since moved back. It's unlikely that we'll ever be in a single office, especially with the merger. In New York, they're not extending their lease. We likely won't either. We are now a fully distributed team and will remain that way. And I see that more and more with startups, especially the startups that I know out in San Francisco because of the rent. In particular, it's an opportunity to find talent elsewhere and to work fully remote.
Yeah, I'll just second it. I have not been on a plane since before St. Paddy's Day. I used to be on planes weekly. I still have clients nationally. I haven't really been trying. I've been trying to stay in at least our domestic time zones. I've hired consultants, and this is actually a good thing. I've hired consultants no matter where they live now that just come through. I only do referral for client and referral for consultants, and I don't advertise. And it is working well because people prefer to do that work-life balance, especially in the consulting world. Even at the big consulting shops, they're saying that their job description is changing tremendously, just like Vanessa mentioned, where you had to spend a lot of time on the plane. So that's a good side of things, although I do miss traveling. I mean, I have a lot of good clients that I'd like to go see in person, and it's tough in that.
Let me chime in real quick with a follow-up question, if you don't mind, Mr. Moderator. Is that okay? No, it's not. Great. Vanessa, this one's for you. I agree with everything you've said in that I think companies are learning to, and if they're not, they're figuring out how to change things so they do, how to work remotely, right? And I think it's a matter of like, you learn right away, like what managers, what team leads can handle this, can figure out the new ways versus can't. And, you know which companies had a CEO or a kind of top-down structure, to your point, that forced people to say, butts and seats, I need to see you here working. And that was their kind of culture and vibe. I agree those disrupt. I guess my follow-up question, then I'll drop out of here. But my follow-up question is, what about the other angle of it? 7 months in, and I'm seeing mental health impacts that I probably wouldn't have even known were a thing 8 months ago. And I've seen not just an exhaustion of COVID in general, but a real desire for people to that were just only complaining about their teammates before. Now, I can't wait to get, look, we need to be able to get back together or have a happy hour or whiteboard session or something. So what about that side of it? And what does the post-COVID reality look like from a workspace because of that angle?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tarek. I think, there will be, I think we can anticipate a sudden rush to the office. So as we start to open back up our offices and we start to focus on having more collaboration and informal meeting spaces, I do anticipate that folks will gravitate initially to the office on a much more frequent basis than they will eventually. But I still don't see them being there all day. I still see it being, we'll drop the kids off at school, we'll drive in for meetings around 3 or 4 o'clock, I'm heading home kind of thing. So I do think that'll happen, but I don't think it'll be an all day event. One of the things that Truist is still planning on opening in 2021 is our Innovation and Technology Center. And really, that's going to be a community space where we invite not only fintechs and entrepreneurs across the ventures portfolio and the Charlotte ecosystem to come in and work and collaborate with us, but we'll be inviting customers in to demo new products and to see different things. So we are still planning on launching that in 2021. We're really excited about it. And so I think it'll be much more like that, where people are being invited in for specific meetings, specific tasks, as opposed to, I need to run into the office to open my computer at 8 a.m. And who knows, we're going to have an espresso bar. There's been no talk of an alcohol bar, but maybe that'll be something that I can
yes.
them to put in. There you go. I love it.
Well, yeah, there you go. Well, and to your point too, Vanessa, I think it's shown that people that we can actually work from home. I really don't think the 9 to 5. I think it's going to be different moving forward, just because with looking at my team as well. I mean, they realize that they can work from home, but the double-edged sword of that is, when do you stop working? I'm still emailing and doing everything at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I guess the 9 to 5, at least you realize you shut your computer and you're done, hopefully. And then there's an end of your day. And that kind of touches on that mental health issue piece, where I think the virtual happy hours and get-togethers were fun, the first 2 months. I think that ran its course. And just wanted to see, what are you doing with your teams in that regard? Are there any fun things that you're doing outside of a virtual happy hour to help with morale or culture within your organizations? And Tim, I'll kind of throw that your way to start.
It's honestly been something we've struggled with early on, because we're effectively establishing a net new culture. We've tried a couple of different pieces of software, a company called Tandem, where you can sort of have a water cooler and quickly video chat with folks. One thing that we are exploring, although it's somewhat pricey and has really good reviews, is online, those challenge rooms, working as a team to get through. I forget what they're actually called. But I think generally speaking, we want to establish a situation where you can talk about different topics with your coworkers, because for instance, in the middle of a merger, I end up meeting with the engineering team a lot, but all I'm talking about is engineering, right? I don't get to know them personally, which is something that we do miss from an office environment perspective. And then a huge piece that I personally miss is just making progress at the same pace. Being able to tap someone on the shoulder and go to a whiteboard is a lot different in a virtual world. So we are trying to navigate sort of that culture development and that ability to work together in any way possible in this current state. So we are trying literally every tool that comes across our desks at this point. But I wouldn't say we've perfected that or found the right answer.
And we got the thing in the chat. It's escape room. You're thinking of escape room.
There it is.
Correct?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, chat, for that. Vanessa or Dan, anything to add to that? Because that is a very important topic these days.
I agree with everything we're saying. I mean, there's such an importance to team person, especially when you're doing brainstorming or figuring out things. And then I just believe that routine of going into work is healthy. And so any type of routine that you can maintain during this period of working from home, I will tell you from a health standpoint, I was very concerned about not getting to the gym. And so my wife, thank God, thought about getting a Peloton before, it was a 5-month thing. So we've had that. And that really has been a difference maker, quite honestly. And little things like that are part of the routine of going to work and socializing and community, I think are really key. And that's why I think Charlotte still gets high marks, to be honest with you, with that community vibe. Even if we aren't in the towers or in our offices today, we still have enough of a community that we're maintaining it, but it's exhausting. And so that's the other mental health thing that's happening right now, is that fatigue. And we are taking more risk. I have lots of network friends, colleagues that want me to go to breakfast, that want me to go to lunch, that are now going out to dinner locally. And I have concern in my bubble because I take care of my elderly part of my family. And so I am they know that and they respect that, but it still is tough on me that I can't go do that. I have a gentleman flying in tomorrow from New Jersey who is a business person, and they wanted to go out to dinner and I've had to decline, and it's because of that key relationship orientation. He's an older gentleman. That's it. I mean, he could not resist getting down here. And so that's just one of those things generationally also, that it's impacting people differently as well.
TJ, I was just going to add, and I think Dan brings up a really good point about the need of socialization, but back to Tim's point around how to boost morale and how to limit the hours. Our entire digital division I just got an invite over the lunch hour, and it's an out of the office invite, and it says decline and dine. And so what we're being encouraged to do is to not take meetings over lunch, to not take meetings before 8, and to not take meetings after 5, and for it to culturally be expected that we not do those things unless there's something really urgent that comes up. And so those are some of the ways that we're trying to let people know that it's okay to shut the computer off at 5, that you're not going to be invited to a meeting at 7 p.m. And that it's okay to walk away. And I think those things are really important, so you can start putting structure and boundaries around your workday.
If I might add one thing, I think I've seen something super unique in this front lately that I think is going to take hold. Charlotte has TJ and I joke a lot about gaming and playing video games. However, Charlotte does have a very much growing esports community, as does nationally and globally. It's a ridiculous market on so many fronts. And there's actually a group locally that has been, among other things, creating an opportunity for corporate-based esports events where you can set up essentially a team building opportunity where folks, again, it's the same thing as we're on Zoom and we're sitting in the same seats. However, now we're playing maybe a Call of Duty, maybe Among Us or Fall Guys, hot games that come out that are hitting, popular culture. And all of a sudden it becomes fun, splits it out. There's coaches, much like in the real world, that spend time with one team versus another. And then you can stream it on Twitch to the rest of the employees. So I think we're going to see an explosion in that secondary and tertiary market around what corporate kind of employee morale and team building means. And I think a lot of industries are going to take advantage of that, esports being one.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, how hard is it to go to bring your whole team to Topgolf? I know, Vanessa, that it'd be frowned upon to be like, hey, we're all going to go to Topgolf and come wear your mask like right now. So, I mean, to Tark's point, he's right with what we're going to be looking at. And I do want to get to a question. I know Tim answered it in the chat, but this is important. I'll throw it to Tim, and then y'all, Dan and Vanessa can chime in. But it was asked by Chuck at the Regional Business Alliance with how will this new model of distributed teams affect Charlotte's ability to attract tech talent? Because obviously attracting talent is always going to be a topic of conversation. So Tim, you answered really well here, but can you just delve into that a little?
Yeah, I think generally any company that's based here in Charlotte is going to have a new leg up in terms of being able to gain access to folks the same way we have access to capital now, that are potentially looking for new opportunities, especially when it comes to engineering talent that's now distributed all over the place. That said, I think as things move forward, depending on what the footprint looks like in the near future and where companies necessarily settle, I'm seeing more and more startups begin distributed and likely maintain a distributed team, right? So the home base is now different, and a startup based in Charlotte isn't necessarily based in Charlotte anymore. What that looks like in the future is anyone's best guess at this point, but generally speaking, I think that companies will have a more opportunity to recruit. Not to say that it will be more successful one way or the other. It's too early to tell.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, that could change the whole way of, economic development works too, especially with that distributed. I mean, everything has been a complete 180 when you look at business models. And I know we started talking about the work from home. I mean, that's the big topic on the commercial real estate front. So Dan or Vanessa, anything on that you would like to add before I have to jump into this question from the audience also?
I'd just say that the pipeline here is strong. We've got a lot of cooperation with the university systems that we built. And so we've got a lot of density that's starting to happen demographically for that. So as long as we don't take the eye off the ball, relatively speaking, because it's always relative, I think Charlotte's in a pretty good position. When we started this, I used to say it's a small town with a lot of people. Now we're a small metropolis. And so there's still room for growth and a lot of opportunity for kind of getting more and more talent and innovation into the city. It's attractive to folks to move here, both on a cost basis and on an amenity basis.
Well, then let's jump back into kind of the corporate culture piece, because this is the question from the audience, and it's a good question because it just makes me think of, so I do a lot of these, and usually it would be in-person events, so I'd be suited up because that's just the attire, and now I'll do these, and this one I was like, Tark, can I wear a polo? He's like, yes. I was like, thank you. So you usually see me with my suit and tie on, but I'll still have my athletic shorts on below it, so it's kind of like my mullet outfit, I call it. So that's the question. It's like, corporate culture, will this be impacted once we are back to normal in the office? Is it relaxed attire expectations or whatever that means to your company? And Vanessa, I'll throw that to you because banking, on that side, I know there is an attire there.
Yeah, personal opinion only. I'm kind of excited to wear pants with zippers and buttons again and put makeup on and, get dressed up a little bit. I just don't see the bank culturally accepting a lot of jeans and joggers and a lot of the things that folks I know have been wearing at home. But will it be more relaxed? Are polos going to be more acceptable? Yeah, maybe. Even our executives who are socially distancing across commercial real estate properties in the city, when you see them on Zoom, they're wearing button downs and a vest, right? And so I think that's pretty relaxed for a bank culture. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be as relaxed as we all have been at home, at least for Truist, especially when it comes to clients. We'll probably wait and see how our clients respond. And if they're suited up, we'll be suited up as well.
Yeah, so maybe we can switch it. We can do it since we're doing 180s with everything. Maybe the entrepreneur like Tim and himself can go to a button-down 3-piece suit, and then the banking world can go to, a t-shirt and, some bonobos or something. I don't know. So,
a great drag I can put you up.
When When I left consulting, I swore I'd never put another suit on, so I'm sticking to that.
Well, for the sake of time, because obviously I know it's getting close to that dinner hour, I do want to ask one last question, and this is directed to all of you. And Dan, I will start with you. And this is kind of the, that $1 million question is, kind of what is your outlook for 2021? What do you see happening in 2021 from your perspective in your business?
I see a lot of opportunity in that area that I was talking about, which is that, updating and automating legacy environment through next-gen technologies. That plays out in the operations areas for products. It plays out in the operations areas for your core support functions like finance. In both those areas, I've got a lot of activity in the pipeline as well as engagements happening. And I think that's the modernization world meeting the next gen world kind of in an accelerated basis. And that won't just be for 2021. That will be for the next 4 to 8 years.
Tim, how about yourself?
Near term, we are very focused on the winter. So we serve small business customers and in particular coffee shops, which for the most part in the suburbs have hung on and ultimately actually thrived depending on their setup. In metropolitan areas like New York, it has not been the case for obvious reasons. So we are monitoring the next 6 to 12 months very closely. There's really no indication one way or the other how this is going to go. There are signs that look terrible and others that are at least pointing to some opportunity. I do, in our line of business, I concern myself with large brands like Starbucks, like Domino's, swooping in and taking ownership of small mom and pops. And I think we very reasonably could look up in 12 months and not see a lot of the community shops that we are expecting to, and instead see a lot of brands that are somewhat stale and maybe not providing what we want out of our community. So this is my own plea to the folks on this call to remember your small businesses.
Oh, absolutely. That's our audience at the Business Journal is one of our bread and butter throughout the nation is their small businesses, and it's key. And so that is huge. And so lastly, Vanessa, I kind of, want to hear from your perspective, obviously, and I'm hearing there's possibly a commercialized product being launched next year as well. Maybe if you want to delve into that while you give your 2021 update.
Sure. So for ventures specifically, we'll continue to invest. We'll continue to build out the team. We are working on launching a commercialization of one of our investments early in the first quarter. And so we're really excited about that. And we also have other companies that we're looking to commercialize. I will tell you right now, the bank is going through a huge MOE. And as we race to integrate all the back-end systems, that'll really prevent us from commercializing as much as I would like to in 2021, but we will get at least one across the wire in 2021. And I think from a ventures perspective, 21 is going to be just like any other year. Other than that, we'll have just probably fewer commercializations, but across the bank, it really just depends. Traffic is down in retail branches and we're racing to help them find digital channels to sell products. And so in some areas of the bank, we'll be very focused and accelerated and helping them deal with the lower volume in traffic, and other areas are doing just fine because their business can really accommodate Zoom or video conferencing or phone calls. And so I think it'll be a mixed bag for us in 2021, but we're really excited to get through the integration. And I'm already thinking ahead to 2022 and all the great things we're going to be able to do. So hopefully a vaccine will come out. We'll actually see some normalcy sometime next year.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, that's a great way to kind of end this panel portion of it. And I can't thank you enough, Tim, Vanessa, Dan, for your time. Because that's the most valuable asset these days. So thank you. And, I've enjoyed this. And thanks again, Tart, for allowing me to be a part of it as well. So turn it over to you, Tart.
TJ, are you in 2021 planning on cutting your hair at any point, or are you just going to continue to be growing that out?
So the next time we have live events, I'm going to try to just have it in a man bun, to be honest, with my suit that we were talking about. So that's kind of, yeah, Is that bad?
My wife got on me, much like you right now, when the party that's in the rear suddenly becomes visible from the front. I mean, to me, that's a pretty good indication of something's got to change, and no vaccine is going to fix that. It's called the salon, TJ. The salon. All of you, thank you so much. This was incredibly insightful. It's just fun to be able to like hear from folks like you and how you're coping with what it sometimes feels like as a individual sport from our home offices these days. We all have to realize that we're all struggling, maybe with different flavors of the same thing right now. So good to hear from you all. We really appreciate it. We can't wait to see what 2021 has in store. And the good news is it can't be worse than 2020. So I'll knock on some wood for that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just share my screen one last time as I sign off and encourage you all to please remember to mark your calendars and join us November 5th, 5 p.m. for that amazing Pay CLT event, as well as November 19th, 8 a.m. Those two are really, I mean, you basically could be at major conventions and conferences right now as it relates to the virtual content that these organizations are putting on. So let's support them. And let's remember, I think Tim summed it up best, which is we're all here for our ecosystem, but our ecosystem and our culture is nothing without the fabric that small business both brings us in what it provides and who it employs. So I think if we remember that as the glue, we will definitely make it out of 2020 and into 2021. So with that being said, thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you next time.